Good morning again, everybody.
Good morning.
We're continuing our new theme for 2016, Practical Faith, this morning, and the title of our talk is Faith in Action, which to me begs the question of what does it mean to live your everyday life with faith. A faith that can heal, a faith that can inspire, faith that can center you, faith that can lead you to a moment of clarity or forgiveness. Thus far we've been describing faith as a belief in invisible powers. Faith is a belief in invisible powers, and it could be a faith in God, but it could also be a faith or a belief in a deeper understanding in a circumstance or in a relationship that may not be showing up in that given moment. A practical faith. I love something the author Robert Fulghum said and how he defined faith. He said, faith is a determination to keep in touch with the unnameable being that dwells in the heart of all existence, you and me included. One more time, faith is a determination to keep in touch with the unnameable being that dwells in the heart of all existence, you and me included. And I like that definition because it doesn't get into this surface definition of faith, that faith is supposed to demonstrate or make certain things happen for us. Faith can be a knowing that we carry with us even in the most chaotic of situations. A couple years ago, I was invited to do a wedding in what I thought was the Temecula area. And my car, a couple years ago, was a little beat up, never too good to take a long drive with. And when I was on my way, it was kind of an interesting wedding. I was going to come early in the morning and do a rehearsal and then hang out a few more hours and do the wedding that early evening. And so I'm just about there, and I get a text message that they'd given me the address wrong. It was really in Mountain Center, which, if you're familiar with the area, is just about an hour or so, but it's through all those Indian casinos, and it's a very windy road, and as I'm getting there, I'm just feeling this car is not going to make it. I'm starting to smell the clutch, and it's starting to burn, and it was quite miraculous. I literally rolled in and hit the sign where this wedding was going to take place. And so the rehearsal went well, a little too much attention on the minister with the broken down car, but everything went okay. I tried to get the car working and it wasn't, and I called the tow truck company and they said, no problem, we'll be there in about 2 hours. So it was a very hot day, but in a very blessed way, somebody showed up in 15 minutes. I was so grateful. They took me down into the most terrifying mechanic shop I'd ever seen in my life. I think they emptied my bank account even before I arrived there. So I knew I was going to be in trouble with the car. But miraculously, again, the hotel where the guests were staying was just down the street. Someone was able to come and get me, and they even had a tram that went back up to the wedding site. So it was pretty serendipitous. In the meantime, I was able to call April. I was so grateful, who began what was supposed to be an hour and a half drive that turned about over a 3-hour drive with traffic to come and pick me up. Everything with the wedding went pretty well. Still a little embarrassed, probably a little bit of oil here or there on the minister's suit performing the wedding. April was there. We went there, got into the car, took a deep breath. Was so grateful to have this day almost over. Turned the key, nothing. The car wouldn't start. We couldn't figure it out. These words from Joseph Campbell about life came to mind that he was inspired with when he was once watching one of those old Walt Disney nature films. He says, I recall once having seen one of those beautiful Disney nature films of a sea turtle laying her eggs in the sand, some 30 feet or so from the water. A number of days later, out of the sand, there came a multitude of tiny, just-born turtles, each about as big as a nickel, and without an instant's hesitation, they all started for the sea. No hunting around, no trial and error, no asking, now what would be a reasonable place for me to head for first? Not a single one of those little things went the wrong way. No, indeed. They went directly as their mother must have known they all would go, Mother Turtle or Mother Nature. A flock of seagulls, meanwhile, having screamed the news to each other, came zooming like dive bombers down on those little nickels that were making for the water. The turtles knew perfectly well that that was where they had to get, and they were going as fast as their little legs could push them. The legs knew what to do, and the eyes knew that what they were seeing out in front of them was where they were going. The whole system was in perfect operation, with the whole fleet of tiny tanks heading clumsily, yet as fast as they could for the sea. And then, well now, one surely would have thought that for such little things those great big waves might have seemed threatening. But no, they went right on into the waves and already knew how to swim. And as soon as they were there, of course, the fish began coming at them. Life is tough. Don't we all feel like little turtles sometimes? And that's how I felt in that moment in the car, not starting like a little turtle trying to find its way. Because there's that seemingly divine intuition in us, an inner knowing that knows what to do, that arcs towards the good, that arcs towards the highest and best. And yet, life is tough indeed. Couldn't get April's car started, so we had to call another tow truck. This one I think did take 2 hours. We were getting to hear the coyotes howl there. But the tow truck driver did get there, wasn't able to do anything with the car. The tow truck driver connected the car, and then his car wouldn't start either. We were in the Bermuda car triangle. Finally, he was able to get the car operational, and I did the last thing in my power I could do. I was so grateful I got to call my mom and dad to come and get us. Great thing for a man in his early 30s to get to do. But I'll always remember, and keep the car running, Mom and Dad. Do not turn off the car. I'll always remember the in and out that we got to have on the way home. Thank you, my mom's here. And I'm so grateful, too, that synchronistically Tina Carson took me to overpay for one of those cars to get it back as well. Thank you, Tina, a few days later. But that's, for me, more what a practical faith is. It's not about making all the right things happen around you, but it's making sure that your consciousness is always seeking that highest and best good. For if we're going through an experience that day of such hard-to-imagine ills befalling me, still, all the little miracles, all the little things that worked out that helped me get there, to do the wedding, to get it on time, to have a loving partner that was going to come pick me up, to have loving parents that I got to spend time with. It's amazing how life works and bends and merges together. Ernest Holmes, in our book of the month, this thing called You, he says, we're having one of those moments here. That's what I get for not moving around. Well, what he means to say. He says, work with your consciousness until it ceases to function on the level of problem and begins to function on the level of the answer. Wouldn't we like to know a few more people like that in our lives, whose consciousness does not dwell on the problem and everything that's wrong and everything that's not right, and seeks to not deny the problem, but allow their consciousness to dwell and be centered on the solution. We talk a lot in religiosity about faith made visible, make your faith visible. But another way that may be more practical for many of us to understand, including myself, unfortunately, that it's often in life that our lack of faith is made visible. That I'm constantly being confronted by my conviction in my fears, in my distrust, in my doubts, in my uncertainties. And that life has a way of reminding me of what my lack of faith is. There's an old Hindu story about a man who's wandering and finds himself lying beneath a large, beautiful tree. And he begins to imagine there, not realizing that what he's chosen to lie under is the mythical, magical, wish-fulfilling tree. So he decides to think about how much he would love to make a home in this area, and all of a sudden he's very surprised to see that a house appears. Wow. Wouldn't it be great to have someone to experience this new home with? And all of a sudden, a beautiful maiden appeared. And he thought, wow, I'm a pretty powerful guy. Then he thinks to himself, wouldn't it be great to have a beautiful meal right now? And food appears before him, and he begins to eat and enjoy the meal. And when it's all done, he goes, I must be under a magical wishing tree. I bet there's some demon in here. And all of a sudden, the demon appears. Then he thinks to himself, oh my gosh, this demon is probably going to eat me. And the demon does. And that's the end of the story. It's a silly little story, but I can resonate with it because there are times where I have been in perfectly wonderful situations, perfectly content in particular relationships, where everything has been okay, but I've allowed that doubt to create those little demons, that bit of distrust, that uncertainty, that fear, that all of a sudden seeks an issue, that all of a sudden seeks a problem, that all of a sudden can't allow me to center myself in a faith that things work out, in a faith that there's a sacred presence there, in a faith that trusts my bonds and connections more than the silly nonsense sometimes of my thinking. Holmes also tells us, he says, your hope lies in the fact that you can change these patterns. Perhaps not in a moment or a day or a month or a year, but you can change them. This is not a process of merely making affirmations or holding thoughts. It is a process of the gradual re-education of your whole mental reaction. It is a process of following the intuition back to the pattern, of feeling toward it, of accepting it, and of acting as though it were there. You know, I know this idea of changing our entire mental makeup sounds pretty daunting, and it can be. You know, working on our own faith should be a constant and consistent practice. But it's so important to remember that in just one moment, by recentering ourselves in a faith in the greater good, in a deeper love, in a grander truth, we can change the course of our experience of anything around us, and in doing so, often walk through those challenging experiences in such a more profound and better way. I had a very good friend with me share an affirmation that she had created for herself, and it was relationship to someone she was praying for who was struggling with alcohol and drug addiction. Her affirmation, I'm willing to let go of outer circumstances. I am open and receptive to receive the guidance my soul has to give. And in one sense, this just sounds like a pretty little affirmation to say, but when I was thinking about it, you know, how difficult it is to turn away from the outer experience, like working with someone who's struggling with drug and alcohol condition, to realize that there's nothing in the exterior that person could do to help that person, or that person may be able to do to help themselves in that moment. To be able to let that go and turn within and say there's nothing in actualization that can change the situation right now, but I know I can turn within and have a greater realization that there's some guidance in my soul and in this person's soul. It resonated with me working with someone in my own life who was struggling with a drug and alcohol addiction, and how challenging it was to try and help in any way that I could. Oh, can I help pay the rent? Can I help set up a rehab? Can I repair this bridge that they burned with this person over here? Can I try to talk sense in them? All that type of stuff, and having to come to that conclusion that the best thing I can do, and probably the only thing of significance, is to let go, is to actually cut ties with this person. And for me to realize that that wasn't just an act of tough love, but really a have to do for me, because what was happening is I was losing hope for that individual. I was beginning to buy in to their belief and how they were living, that they were never going to get through what they were going through. I was beginning to see them as incapable of pulling themselves out of that situation. And that was another reason I had to cut ties, because even if I were the last person, I was committed to knowing this person was whole, to knowing this person could change his life, to knowing that this person could do the work. I said to myself, I'm not going to contact this person, and my prayer is that if this person calls me, I will know that they're on the path of being healthy again. This type of story, this type of experience reminds us that faith isn't about a practical faith, isn't about denying the darkness in our lives. It's about being able to stand with a conviction and a confidence in the darkness of our lives, knowing that there is light, that something can indeed come about. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, who we celebrate tomorrow and all the time, I hope, he says, "Faith in the dawn arises from the faith that God is good and just. When one believes this, he knows that the contradictions of life are neither final nor ultimate. He can walk through the dark night with the radiant conviction that all things work together for good for those that love God. Even in the most starless midnight may herald the dawn of some great fulfillment. Even the most starless midnight may herald the dawn of some great fulfillment." I was so grateful, and I know this doesn't always happen in these types of circumstances, that I got that call. He wasn't doing wonderful, but he was alive and doing better and on his way. I'm not saying that's the result of me going in and praying, but there's a lesson for all of us that there is in letting go, not a giving up, but in a turning within, establishing a greater faith about ourselves, not going so low to steep to the level of the problem, but holding in that grander consciousness of the solution. I began the talk this morning by defining faith as our belief in invisible powers, but for me a more practical definition of faith is that your faith is how you see. Your faith is how you see the world. Your faith is how you see yourself. Your faith is how you see others around you. It gives us the opportunity to say, are you pleased with your faith? Are you happy with how you see yourself? Does it really match up with what you know deep down within you? Are you happy with how you view the world around you? With how you view your loved ones? Perhaps there are some different points of view that need reconciling within each one of us to improve how we see our practical way of viewing the world. I got to speak with a woman a few weeks ago who was sharing with me how deep she was in her story, that she can't get any help. She has to do everything by herself, and nobody helps her. And have any of us ever been there before? I've been in that one, that lack of support story. And we spoke for a while, and eventually she kind of was able to admit that, yes, it's her experience that no one helps her, but she also realizes that she never asks for help. And if she does, she asks for a little bit of help, hoping the other person will figure out that she needs help and go that extra mile and figure it out that they never do. Or that there are times where people do offer help and she says no, because she's so dead set on that story of her victimness and not getting the help. That she's so stuck that she's almost comfortable in the paranoia that everyone around her and that life itself is working against her. It reminds me of what the Grateful Dead taught. They said that we should also have pronoia, where you believe that everyone around you and life itself is all working for your favor and your highest good. Practice any pronoia practitioners in here? I hope so. Good thing to suffer from. By viewing faith as how we see, we can step out and take a look at that vision to see if our faith is something that is based upon our convictions and what we believe in, or if it is something that is based in our doubts, our uncertainties, and our confusions. It's time to have conviction. It's time to have clarity. It's time to know what we believe and to live it with clarity and to trust what that demonstrates for us. I love something that Karen Miller, the Buddhist thinker, said. She said, "Where do you find faith? You won't believe me, but you already have it. You have it when you surrender to a night's slumber and open your eyes to another day. You have it every time you exhale and in that half second before you automatically inhale again. You have it when you put on your shoes or when you don't and walk across this planet without falling off the face of it. Mine is not the faith of wishful thinking. It's faith with arms and legs, days and nights, eyes and ears. Pull up the vines that hide the truth. your ideas and expectations, your doubts and foregone conclusions, your beliefs and fears, no matter how well argued or self-righteous. Disentangle your feet. Take the path to the highest point and see the panoramic view of a place assembled without a plan, with no visible mortar or glue, functioning with the perfection born of an intelligence you cannot comprehend. I was listening to an interview a few months ago with Ursula Le Guin, who's a well-known author, and she's heading up, she's close to 90, and the first thing that she says to the interviewer, that it cracks her up to see all these people in their 60s and 70s writing these memoirs. And then she comments and she uses this beautiful metaphor for her life at her age. She says, it's like being high up on a mountain and looking back and saying, oh, look at the view. Gee, I never saw all that together before. There's something about moving in our faith, no matter what age we are, and bringing it to that top of the mountain, to that mountaintop, and taking a long look at where we've been, the peaks and the valleys and the all of it, and seeing that perhaps when we see it from that largest viewpoint, it all ties together. It all equals a greater peace. It all equals a greater knowing. It all equals or points to a deeper knowledge in life itself. When we can build and cultivate that faith that can allow us to have that mountaintop consciousness, and we bring it down with us, no matter what valley or irk or crevice we find ourselves in, we can move out of it with clarity, with confidence, with not just faith in our future, but with faith in ourselves. So thank you for your time this morning, everybody. Happy Sunday.